So, Warframe is the kind of game where you have to grind stuff out. It's just a fact. You have to. You don't have a choice. The difference is there are so many frames to grind for in this game, unique frames to grind for in this game, that sometimes it can be a little daunting to figure out exactly where to start. And today, see, look at this list. This list is frames that you can earn. So today, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to teach you the 4 best frames that you can grind for early on when you're just starting out as a brand new Tenno, and tell you why those 4 frames are the best ones that you can go for, because they make some of the most sense. And the last one that we talk about is going to be one I don't even have yet because I've not actually ran the quest to get him, but we'll get there in just a minute. So join us as we discuss the 4 best frames to grind for early on in your Warframe journey. So, as I stated, there are 4 frames to choose that I think you should start with, and I'm going to go through this list kind of, I would say, most user-friendly and easiest to hardest. And the first one of those frames is going to be Rhino. Now, we're going to be using Rhino Prime for the example here because I actually ate my Rhino, but we're gonna go and use Rhino Prime as an example. So, Rhino. This is a Rhino. Rhino is a very interesting frame. Rhino is probably one of the best of the 4 starters, personally, and this is for 2 reasons. One, it provides you a very tanky frame. He has some very good, just overall tankiness to him. Let me show you his abilities so we can kind of discuss those abilities, and I can explain what I mean when I say he's tanky. He's also probably the most straightforward of the 4 Warframes that you can pick up. You can take him through pretty much everything in the game. So let's break down why Rhino is a great starter. First off, his passive, he emits a shockwave dealing 100 damage after landing from a great height. It can be a little annoying, but it does work really well for clearing out some of the crowd control and kind of just shaking them enough. And there's actually an aura mod that you can get, a little more on those in a different video, that allows you to knock people back with that passive. So the first of the 3 things that I really think is crucial for you to learn in Rhino's kit is Iron Skin. This is a ferrite armor overshield that basically helps build Rhino up to damn near indestructible heights. You can see that little video there as it runs, and it shows how the Iron Skin works and the base number of overshield that you get. And the beauty of this is it also gives you this invulnerability to the first 3 seconds. So that's awesome. The other one is this Rhino Stomp. This is his ultimate ability that you get. He basically stomps the ground as you see here, and when he stomps the ground, it knocks everything into the air in an immediate circle around him, and kind of deals, in my case, it deals 1,000 damage for the stomp, and then also causes them to be suspended in the air for a short amount of time. The last one that is really useful is Roar. This grants all nearby Warframes increased damage for a short duration. So this is useful when you can roar and you buff your teammates, you buff yourself. It's a fantastic little addition. He buffs people. So he works as both tank and a little bit of support, but this is really good if you're by yourself. Even you roar, you get the neat little buff there from roar. So now let's answer the question of where do we get Rhino from? The first thing you're going to have to understand about Warframe is a grindy game. I've said that, but I'm doubling down. It's a grindy game. But Rhino is actually one of the first boss fights that you come across. So this mission here, this Fossa Assassination of the Jackal, you have a chance of earning all three of his parts, chassis, system, and neuroptics from that. Now, you're not going to probably get all three runs in a row. You get one part per defeating the Jackal, and you're going to have to run that probably, I would say, anywhere between half dozen to a dozen times in order to really get full access. The last part is the blueprint. You'll come over to the market here. Fastest way to do this is to search the Rhino, and he is right here. You click him, and then you buy a blueprint. Blueprint would typically run you 35,000 credits, but since I don't really need it, I'm not going to buy it. But right here, you click it, it'll say, hey, would you like to purchase this? That's where you get the blueprint for Rhino. That is how you earn him. Like I said, first boss fight, always make sure that when you're grinding him, you have your availability set to on for public. That way you can have a squad of people ready to run with you when you are trying to farm out Rhino. So now we're going to move on to the next frame, Frost, and kind of explain to you why he's a great starter frame and where you can get him. All right, so Frost is our second Warframe that I would recommend. This is Frosty Boy right here. Much like with Rhino, I am using Frost Prime, as I have already eaten my regular Frost for the helmet. But again, more on that later. Now, Frost is a little bit of a 180 if you're going to talk class sections from Rhino, because unlike Rhino, Frost is tanky. Frost is far more tanky, or Frost is DPS. I'm sorry, Rhino is tanky. Frost is DPS. So his abilities, while relatively straightforward, do still come with a little bit of a slight learning curve. Let's break down a few of those abilities. First off, you have Freeze, which is the first of his abilities. This will freeze an enemy in their tracks, and it will last, in my case, for 18 seconds. So this is great. It's only a single target shot, but it's great if you're wanting to hold people in one place. His passive, if for Frost Prime, and I think it's the same for Frost, I could be wrong, but if he gets hit with a melee attack, there's a 10% chance to freeze the attacker for 20 seconds. So that's kind of cool. His next ability is the Ice Wave. This basically shoots razor sharp ice crystals out of the ground. And if you build this up right, it can be really, really cool and work well. Next is the Snow Globe. As you see here, he basically creates a nice little frozen biome around himself. And as you can see, he freezes it. And if you activate it again, it will actually explode and knock them back. Last is his Avalanche ability, where he summons a huge just amount of ice that freezes and shatters all the enemies in the radius, as you see here. It's actually a really cool ability, but as you can see with his three, or with all four of his abilities, he's definitely built more for DPS than tankies. Now, the thing is, Frost is probably going to be one of the last of the 4 that you earned, which is funny I say that because I don't have one of the 4 of them. But let me explain to you why I think Frost is going to be your last one. Frost is located here in Ceres. So in order to get there, you have to go Earth to Venus. Venus will take you to Mercury, which will then allow you to open up Earth to Mars, and then Mars to Ceres, which is where Frost is located. Ceres is going to be in your 5th planet. So basically, Frost is going to be the 5th frame or 5th assassination that you can go through and grind for. But the mission is extra. You are fighting Lich Krill and Captain Vor. Now, we're not going to get into the details of the fight, but short story is it is a duo fight. Same with Rhino, or the same stats as Rhino apply. You basically have to farm this mission out, and for each one that you get, or each time you beat him, you get a piece of Frost. You get the chassis, neuroptics, and systems, and then once you get all 3 pieces, you come on down back to the marketplace here. And much like with Rhino, you just type in Frost, which I screwed up. Type in Frost, and he will pop up right there. And boom, blueprint. By that, you have all of his pieces. Yep, his passive is the same. So that's one of the cool things about those 2 frames. They're kind of easier to get a hold of, if you will, but not like in a weird way. One is way more. Rhino is way easier to get a hold of than the other, just because he's a little closer in the star chart. So we've now discussed half of the frames. Let's go on now to Limbo. Limbo is going to be an interesting frame to talk about. So as we get into Limbo, kind of bear with me as I break him down. This is going to be a real interesting endeavor. So Limbo is our 3rd Warframe here. You see him in all of his astute top hatty glory. Look at this thing. I do like the way Limbo looks, not going to lie, with his 6 shooters on his hip. Pretty cool frame. But Limbo is very interesting. He also acts as DPS if we're talking class. And I'm not going to lie, there's a long time that Limbo was discussed very negatively within the Warframe community. And it's mainly because of the player and less because of the frame. Now, apparently, they've made some changes to the kit that allow for less stupidity. And let me explain to you, as we go through his abilities, kind of why everybody thought Limbo was the worst. First off, we have our passive. Dodge to enter and exit the rift. Entering leaves behind a small rift portal lasting 5 seconds. Energy slowly recharges in the rift, and each enemy killed in there also grants 10 energy. Now, there used to be a point, and there still may be, because I've not played with Limbo in some time, where if you were to go in and out of the rift, you would actually be able to drag your friends and your party members in and out of the rift. So what happened for a lot of people is they got pissed that they were getting dragged in and out of the rift. And I can't blame them, honestly, because it got annoying. Because if you're in the rift and you can't fight the enemies outside the rift, and yeah, it turned into a pain. But I feel like they have reworked that a little bit. So that's why he was included. There was a lot of talk amongst my Warframe council that I have as to why he should be included. And I feel this is a correct inclusion upon breaking it apart. And I'll explain a little more of why I think it was a good idea once we get through his abilities. So, first ability here is Banish. He throws out a wave of energy that basically pushes enemies out and pushes them into a different plane of existence and damages the enemy with rift energy. Then you have Stasis, which freezes rift-bound enemies, while active enemy projectiles are arrested in midair, resuming its trajectory when Stasis ends. So you can kind of freeze that whole thing, which is kind of cool. And you'll see the numbers are red. It's because of the way that my Limbo is built. He does need to be tweaked. I'm not going to lie. But that's a different video for a different day. Third ability here is the Rift Surge, which surges nearby rift-bound enemies with energy. When killed, the Rift Surge is transferred to a nearby enemy outside the rift. Surge enemies that leave the rift perform a radial banish. Now, you can kind of see how this works. A lot of his stuff can be used as crowd control, if you've already noticed, but he's still DPS in an astute, roundabout way. His last ability here is going to be the Cataclysm, which involves a violent blast of void energy that tears open a pocket in the rift plane, which can sustain itself for a short period before collapsing in another lethal blast. Now, this is actually really neat. And this is it's like a combination Rhino Stomp explosion type thing, which is kind of cool. He really, if you build him correctly, he is definitely a lot more crowd control and DPS than our previous than Rhino. More crowd control and support than Frost for sure, but still a good overall frame as far as that goes. So now we've already discussed the how you know what he does. Let's talk about how to get him, which is another reason he was kind of included on this list. I've already done the quest, so let me pull this up. There's a quest you receive for him called the Limbo Theorem right here. Once it's played, you cannot replay it, but it is a quest that you can obtain and achieve once you have gotten the Arcwing, and each mission grants you a piece of Limbo. And then finally, once you complete the quest, you will get the blueprint for him, which kind of makes him one of the easier ones to earn because it's just a quest. It's 3 missions, 3 quests. It's great. It's awarded to you once you complete the Jupiter and Europa Junction. It's an optional quest that you access from here in the Codex. So that's one of the major reasons that he was included, because he's actually one of the easier frames to get comparatively. And I'm kind of excited that he got a rework, because for the life of me, he was pretty terrible. But now I've seen him be very viable in some end game activities. Now, see, I think you may have to buy his blueprint here in the marketplace, as you just saw. I can't remember if you get it from that quest or not. It's been so long since I've done it, I'm not gonna lie. But ultimately, Limbo is a good inclusion here, even though I fought against it initially. And hopefully those of you that are interested in how Limbo functions are willing to give him a try by picking him up in the Limbo Theorem quest. We have one more frame to talk about today for our final 4th one. I don't have him yet. It's kind of interesting, but we're not going to walk through all the steps on how to get him. I'll explain to you in detail on how they work, but we're not going to go through all that, because in some videos I've already talked a little bit about it. But the last frame is going to be Inaros. So the last of our 4 warframes is Inaros. Now, I don't have the ability to show you Inaros, mainly because I don't have him. But we can discuss Inaros a little bit here by using this. So I can't show him to you in the flesh, no pun intended. But Inaros is the king of the desert, and he's an interesting frame to add to this list. And let me kind of break down the abilities here and explain to you why. The first is his passive, which is actually super cool. When bleeding out, Inaros becomes entombed in a protective sarcophagus. He can revive himself by draining the life force from nearby enemies and allies. Definitely an interesting passive. He is one of a very few frames that without alteration can bring himself back to life without having to use a revive. That is a very unique thing. So first off, we have desiccation. Desecration? There's no R there, so we're going with desiccation. Blast enemies with waves of cursed sand that blinds them and steals their health. So as we can already see here, Inaros kind of leans into that life steal, healy frame type thing. Again, if you're going to go on class, but it teaches you a little bit about healing abilities within Warframe. So the next one is Devour. Devour, hold power to trap target in quicksand and draw them in for devouring. This steals health and ultimately creates a friendly sand shadow. As you can see in the video here, where they kind of create a clone of the Grenier that will shoot for you. They hold themselves in quicksand and they get devoured and boom, become a sand shadow. Like a little minion. Next is Sandstorm. Become a whirling spiral of sand that sends enemies flying and devours those trapped in quicksand. So you can see in the video here, he literally just becomes like a little Tasmanian devil tornado made of sand and just throws about enemies. This is probably the only one of his abilities that really doesn't have a life steal or life gain element to it. Last is his ultimate, or four, depending on who you talk to, called the Scarab Storm, or Scarab Swarm, where you charge to transform health into hardened Scarab armor. Discharge to blast enemies with Scarab Swarm. Survivors then have their health drained and bestowed on allies. So you can see here in this video that he is very big on healing, life steal, and keeping himself alive. The abilities are really interesting and a cool combination, but it kind of makes him one of the harder ones to master of the four of these. Which brings me to kind of the final point of Inaros here. Inaros isn't complicated to get, but can be a bit confusing if you're new to Warframe. So if you have seen the Prime Parts video, you may know a little bit about this. If you haven't yet, I understand. I would be like, hey, go do that. But when this video ends. So the first thing you'll need to do is wait for the Void Trader Bayo Kitir to show up. Now, I don't have him as an option on the menu because he only shows up on Friday through Sunday, and this is being recorded on a Tuesday night. And basically the way Barrow works is you trade in prime parts to him for ducats. Now, Barrow comes in with new merchandise every 2 weeks, but one thing that he always has on him to sell is the Sands of Inaros quest. Keep hitting the wrong button. The Sands of Inaros quest right here. Now, you pick up this quest from Barrow Kitir. It costs, I believe it's 100 ducats, and I think it's 100,000 credits. To get ducats, in case you're wondering, just as a quick refresher, cash in prime parts on relay stations at the ducat stations, and be ready for Barrow Kitir to be there when he rolls in. Then you just basically buy the quest, and then you run the quest. You'll get all of his parts, including his blueprint, from this Sands of Inaros quest, which obviously, as you can see here, I have not done. I will be working on that. Honestly, this is one of the easier frames to get a hold of if you just knock a few relics out, take those prime parts, cash them in for ducats, and then buy this from Barrow. Barrow is here every 2 weeks. So every other Friday, you'll see him drop in, and I wish I had a bit of a way to illustrate for you kind of what you're looking for. But we'll do a live video on Barrow Kitir, or not a live video, but a video on Barrow Kitir when he's actually here, So you can kind of see that in action. But for the most part, that's kind of the long and short of Inaros. And that kind of brings us to the last of the 4 frames that, you should grind for. Now, there are currently 51 frames in Warframe. This is not a comprehensive list of the 4 best, or even like the 4 best frames in the whole game. Let me rephrase that. Or the 4 easiest to necessarily get, as you've heard throughout some of this explanation. But these are the 4 frames that when you're less than 15 hours into this game, you don't have a lot of slots, your mastery level is not the highest, and you're still not sure what to do. These frames are the ones to grind for. And I think that you, as a noob 10-0, if you're watching this, have a real cool, this is the kind of groundwork that you could lay to build yourself up, to get yourself some warframes, get yourself some mastery points, and get yourself, a variation of different play styles. So that's gonna wrap this video. I appreciate you guys for watching. First thing I'm gonna do here before we end this video is I'd like to pitch you guys a question. If you're new to Warframe and you've watched this far, we've told you what you should grind for, right? These are the frames you should grind for. Of those 4, which 4 sound the most interesting to you? If you've watched this video and you're a veteran to Warframe, first off, if I've missed anything or you disagree with me, tell me in the comments. Would much appreciate it. But if you don't disagree with me, what is your favorite Warframe that you've grinded for and why? So that some of the newbies can kind of see some of the frames they have to look forward to in the future. Last but not least, do me a quick favor. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like and a subscribe on the channel, as that is the hands down best way to help the channel grow. It's free, and the more that you click that like button, the more that you comment, the more that we hit those subscribes, YouTube knows that I don't suck at this, and they will proceed to continue, hopefully pushing my stuff into the hands of 10-0 who need me everywhere. So, until the next time that we enter the void for another adventure, I am the Madman saying take care, dreamers, as there are threats around every corner of the Origin system.